Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential because when you keep growing, we all get stronger. And we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit with myself, Wendy Batts, and friend and co-host, Ken Miller. Ken, how are you?
I'm well, Wendy. How are you?
You sound so... I'm well. I'm great.
I did put it out like that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
I'm good.
Yeah, there you go. Like, bring the happy. Come on. You're spending time with me and our NASM family and people that listen to Random Fit. And today's episode, we are talking about strength and numbers. I think this is super important because oftentimes there are people out there that are lonely and we don't really realize it, but we're going to talk about overcoming loneliness through exercise. So Ken, I know you and we had a really long discussion about that. We've seen it. We lived through a pandemic. We're seeing now what's happening since the pandemic. So I felt like this was going to be one that we really should bring to the forefront and talk about today.
Yeah, and I think the term loneliness, right, versus isolation. You brought up the pandemic where a lot of us were inside, we were in our own homes, we couldn't go to work, we couldn't go to school. And so there is a difference between isolation and loneliness, because there were times where my Zoom session with my clients, and they're in their homes and I'm in my home, and from that vantage point, we were able to kind of eliminate that sense of isolation because there was a connection. But when we look at there is a difference between when you're the only one you see all day long, or you're stuck behind the computer. You're isolated. But you can also look at it from the standpoint that when you're lonely, you can be in a room full of people, but from the vantage point that if you have no connection, if you don't know anybody, if there's no interaction between you and somebody else, or you don't feel like you're interacting meaningfully with anybody else, that's what we can categorize loneliness versus isolation. So that loneliness is, again, more of a subjective feeling, where isolation is more objective. So when you and I talked about this, Wendy, it is about differentiating that, because of having to work from home, or like what you do. You're behind the computer, you're teaching virtually, but from that vantage point, you're isolated. But you eventually do things in your day to where you can connect and you can be amongst other people, which kind of eliminates that feeling of being alone or loneliness. So I think that's one of the things we want to discuss first.
Yeah. And I think when we think about it too, we've got to look at our elderly population. I look at my father, his wife passed away. He lives alone. He isn't able to go and do the things that he used to do, which is go golf every day with his buddies. He had a noon group. Mm-hmm. They were always able to meet. But when he became a caretaker, he's no longer able to do that because his sense of balance is off. There's a lot of things that happen when you stop working out, you stop being active because you're now a caretaker. And so when you're looking at someone like him, I feel bad because he's by himself. He lives alone. He doesn't want to move. He doesn't want to lose. We think that if we move him into I don't want to call it a home, but even independent living, mm-hmm. where we know that he's got help should he fall, he doesn't want to do that because it gives away his freedom to be able to leave and do what he wants to do, even though he still can do that. It's just this thing that sometimes our seniors or active older adults are facing. But then I know too, after I had a child, so I'm thinking about a mom who just had a baby and isn't able to go to work because you have to stay home and take care of this child that now has changed your life and you're by yourself, but this newborn. And I know some people end up having postpartum depressed, or they become very depressed because now they're not able to go to work. They're not able to socialize, even though it's for a short period and they're blessed with this new baby. It's really hard mentally for someone that's very social and likes to be around a lot of people. And so when you look at these different scenarios, there's pockets that happen. It's not just, oh, you're forced to stay home because of a pandemic. This happens in everyday lives, and a lot of people that surround us that sometimes I take for granted unless I have lived it or seen it. So those are two examples that I wanted to give, because I'm sure anyone listening to this probably knows someone that's aging that may live alone, or someone that just had a baby whose husband goes to work and they don't have anyone else at home. Sometimes this can go a little bit deeper in what we're going to talk about when we dig into it. And when you're, the reason, another stat that you pulled, Ken, that I was like, wow, that really hit home. When you're thinking about loneliness, we obviously think about suicide rates and things like that and what can lead to that. We don't want to go down that path, but we also want to think that it's been linked to increased risk of mortality comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
That was crazy to read that stat. But when we talk about the risk of mortality, we're talking about all-cause mortality outside of accidents. You're not getting hit by a car. This is just the risk. This is the stuff that's happening internally, physiologically, that's contributing to you having the equivalent lifestyle of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which kind of blew my mind, because imagine 15 cigarettes, that person, I don't associate it. I mean, I'm not separating myself from anybody like that, but that's not my circle of friends, but I can only imagine what it is to have a cigarette in your hand all day long, and the things that we know to happen to you physiologically with that. And that is the same, statistically speaking, the same effect that being lonely can have on your health. And that was one of the reasons why we want to talk about loneliness, in case you are somebody who does feel does have that feeling a day, but to know that there are ways of overcoming loneliness through exercise.
Yeah. And there was a study that was published by the Journal of Health and Social Behavior stating that loneliness can weaken the immune system, making individuals more susceptible to illness. Now, we know that because obviously if someone is sitting at home and they're not doing anything, not necessarily being isolated, and like you said, just feeling like they're on their own and they don't have other outside sources to lean on, people get bored. That's why they smoke. People think that that's a way to gives them something to do. It's like some people say that it's just something that they do because it's a habit and it keeps them from being bored. So when you think about this, if people aren't going out, they're not moving. Unfortunately, we're seeing statistics of low back pain. Well, if you're not working out and you're sitting down all day and you're not really doing much and you're in a recliner, that makes sense because you're not moving your body and you're putting yourself in a long stress position. Your sacrum then doesn't start to move when you're supposed to move, and low back pain can easily happen because your hip flexors are tight. We've talked about that all the time. But if people also aren't motivating themselves to get up and move and exercise, this journal itself and the research behind it was stating your immune system also starts to go on the downside. So therefore you can get sick easier. Then you're really at home and you feel terrible. And so it's not doing anything for your psyche either. It's just, unfortunately, this downhill slope that we're seeing. So when I saw that, and then they can experience, obviously, with no exercise, higher blood pressure. Then there's altered heart rate variability, which we've talked about, HRV a lot. So there's not a lot of positive things that are happening here.
Yeah, and like you said, Wendy, you have that downward spiral. If you have a compromised immune system, not only do you get colds and flus and things like that easier, but the intensity of being sick, of having a bad cold versus a light cold, one where you're functioning versus one where you're in bed, you've got the box of tissue, you got the hot tea, all of that stuff going, but also the duration to where, I can get over a cold pretty quickly. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get colds. I do. I just don't have them for long. And even when I do get them, they're very light in intensity. But, we know those people that can hold on to a cold for a week and a half. as well. So the question of, are you doing what you can to boost your immunity, not so that you're bulletproof, but when you do get sick, you can handle it in the best way that you can.
Well, that's talking a lot about what's happening to our body, but think about there's a lot of mental health ramifications that we're seeing as well. And a lot of different studies and research out there, and studies have shown that it can impair cognitive function and increase the risk of cognitive decline in older adults. I've seen it. Unfortunately, I'm seeing it. It's really, really hard. But then too, there's a higher significant risk, which we would know this based on what we're seeing and we're hearing, of development of mental health disorders, including depression and anxiety, which then can lead to going to the doctor if they are going to actually go out and you're feeling this way. And then you get put on prescription pills, which nobody wants to do. And we're going to talk now, we're talking about all the Debbie Downer sides of what's happening with this loneliness, but how common it is. So instead of taking medicine, if it's something that just happened, we have seen so many benefits now with what exercise can do. So when we're talking about what the purpose of overcoming this, exercise is the way to really boost and combat this loneliness feeling and issues, especially on what it's doing to our psyche, but then also physically as well.
Yep. And when we talk about the benefits of exercise, the boost in serotonin, endorphins, those feel good hormones, when you do exercise, when you do take that next step in going outside, something as simple as going for a walk, if not a jog or a run, but going outside, and as an example, or if you have a home gym, again, we're not talking about the social factor. We're just talking about the benefits of movement. So the effects of serotonin boost, endorphins flowing through your veins, that's a great feeling to have, as well as that feeling of accomplishment when it comes to, I just worked out. You can check off a box. You can go on through the rest of the day knowing that you accomplished something for yourself. So you put all of those things combined from a hormonal standpoint, from a mental standpoint, that's one way to kind of offset that feeling of, or the physiological effects, at least when it comes to loneliness.
And we read all kinds of stats when we were going through this. It was amazing to see just the numbers of how exercise has been shown to reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. It helps with your well-being. It helps with your mind-body connection, like you said. So even just when you're doing this by yourself, there are so many positive things. But then if you're incorporating the outdoor activities, we've talked about the physical benefits, which you just talked about, but that also helps maybe open the door to interactions and connections with other people that maybe you might not have done unless you had gone outside. So I'm a big advocate of getting groups together and going for walks and runs and hikes and bikes, because I love being social. But I also like to do it because when I moved to Atlanta, I didn't know anyone. I knew like 2 people, but they had families, and I lived by myself. I was dating someone at the time that lived in a completely different state. So when I say I know no one, it was hard because I did kind of feel lonely because I missed my friends and I missed the social interaction that I had in a different state. But then I had to open up my eyes and say, you know what, it's time to start over. I could do that because that's who I am. But I've been in that position of, it's easy just to stay inside and just do what I want to do for myself, but that's not healthy. So what could I do? I ended up joining groups and then became leads of people that were also those same individuals that I were a few years before that, because I know how hard it is to make friends sometimes. And if you're not in a group to start with, to merge into an already a group that exists of friends, and you're kind of joining in a party that maybe you invited yourself to.
That's right. But we love those people too, right? So for those of you, yeah. So you're listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, and this episode is Strength in Numbers and Overcoming Loneliness Through Exercise. And we've just gone over some of the physiological effects of having chronic feeling, that feeling of loneliness all the time. But when you take steps to be outside, start to join groups, and if you do this on a regular basis, guess what? Your body is going to change So as your body goes, just think if you're going out and you took that step outside and you're starting to exercise and you're doing it on a more regular basis, whether it's resistance training, some kind of cardio, or even team sport. But your body, if you're in a deficit, you're gonna shed some extra calories, and if you're resistance training, you're gonna put on some lean tissue. So from that standpoint, self-esteem, confidence, all that stuff goes up as well. So, and this can again counter some of the physiological effects of chronic loneliness.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of benefit in that too, just being consistent at exercise.
Well, and you can start to join groups. I think that was a big thing. People were like, well, I can't necessarily, I'm not a member of this gym, or I don't really know where to go here. Parks, recreation, there's a
Hmm.
bunch of recreational activities, communities
Yeah.
that are offering a bunch of different things. I know we've talked about different, going to different places where they have outside yoga, just being a part of the environment, getting to know people in your community. I know, and I live in a pretty big subdivision that has a little park area where we have gatherings and movie nights and social events where you kind of get to know your neighbors, and that stuff's important because, like you said, it's all about getting out there, having more self-esteem. We know when we work out what it does to us. I know what it does to me. I mean, I'm exhausted, but I feel so much better that I went out and moved because I'm not sore anymore, because I've been sitting or whatever the case may be. But it's time to take action. And if you don't want to go outside and you don't want to do that, there are so many virtual things that people can do where you're still having that social connection and doing workout groups. I know, Ken, you actually still train. I still train virtually, but more one-on-one, or I'll do a couple at the same time. You
Hmm.
actually do a group session, don't you?
Yeah, and
With
I
your
talk
old
about
men that you talk
my
about.
rise and shine group. We meet twice a week, but this was again an effect of that isolation. Everybody had to be at home. They shut down the gyms, and to get these guys who average age is 75 years old, I had to get on the phone with them. Okay, you got to download Zoom. Here's your account. You're gonna get the link from me. But the as things have, I mean, it's been 4 years. I mean, they said we're gonna support you while your gym is closed. And you know what? They're still with me today, logging in twice a week. And the cool thing about it, Wendy, and I don't mind doing this. I love doing it because it actually represents that connection because a couple of them have moved away and they're not all centralized in the same area anymore, but we'll get our workout in. We'll go 50, 55 minutes for the training session. I will log off, and here we are. When once we do our little cool down, they're pulling up the chairs, they're pulling up the pillows that they're going to sit on, and they actually will chat and they'll connect and they'll joke around with each other for, I don't know, some like 15, 20 more minutes after we're done. But that's the connection that they have. They're friends. They were friends before I came along, and they're friends now. They still get together, but it's at the end of our session, I log off and they're still chatting away with each other. And that's the connection that we're talking about when it comes to kind of breaking up that feeling of loneliness. But they definitely they keep things going.
Well, and one thing I wanted to point out is in different areas, because I actually helped someone open multiple gyms in the Arizona area, or in the state of Arizona, and kind of the Scottsdale area, where we would run sessions and it was 4 to 5 people at the same time doing whatever program benefited them. So my job was to set everything up, show them how to execute it. They had to count for themselves. I would set the next person up. So you have to be, as a trainer, very,
Mhm.
very good at multitasking. But the best part about that is they could sign up for a month, whatever days that they wanted. They had their calendar. They paid for however many sessions up front. So even if they didn't show, they still had to pay, which if you do that, you're held accountable. But the best part about that, Ken, is these groups started to stay with each other. And
Mhm.
so if somebody started to bail out and didn't show, they're the ones on the phone bringing them in saying, hey, we miss you.
Yeah.
And it was this sense of, hey, we're all going to go out tonight. And it's on a weekend. And this is a group that didn't know each other at all. And some people just were workaholics. They didn't have a lot of friends. They didn't have a lot of interaction. And then there's other people that were the social butterflies, that's what they do for their job. They were hotel, what is it? The hotel experience people, where they would come
Right.
in. And so they welcome everyone. And it was great. It's one of those things where they got a really good workout. It was really good for them and their bodies. It was really good for, one of them had rheumatoid arthritis, and another one had osteopenia, and both of them from working out reversed those numbers in a very positive way. And osteopenia turned into having really good bone density over time. And so there's so many positive things that we know comes with exercise, but there were also so many lonely people. And I say that because you wouldn't think they're super successful. But as we said in the very beginning, even when you're with a group, if you don't feel like you fit in, you have all these things going on inside of you. Exercise is shown to do so many positive things. And I think it's just important sometimes to remind people that you're not alone. There are people out there. There are things that you can do. And if you sit down and you're sedentary and you feel isolated, the best thing you can do is just start moving. Doesn't have to be anything besides, like you said, go outside for a walk, do little bitty things at a time until you start to feel better. And then look around in your area and see, because there's other people that are feeling the same way. And I think sometimes that just needs to be brought to the forefront, that we're trying to build community and build a stronger nation, because our numbers are going in downhill with obesity rates and everything else. And just moving. Exercises, what is it? Movement is medicine.
Movement is medicine. And you were talking about it earlier with Parks and Recs, and I'm involved with support organization, Friends of the Parks Foundation. But the one thing that I encourage a lot of people to do is to, when you check your mail, don't throw away that little booklet that shows what classes are available. Through the community college, through senior centers, Parks and Recs facilities, if you have that available, because they'll have these classes and they're economical too. Sometimes it's just a cost fee of $10. Like my wife, she did a volleyball class, and she played a volleyball after college as a part of a friends group that she did. But then when we live up here, she moved over here and away from where she was living before. She stopped playing volleyball. So she got into that group. She met some people and it was fun. If anything, it was just fun, right? She felt a part of the event. I don't think she exchanged numbers and started, hanging out with some of the people in the class, but she was out there, and it was, I think it was like the cost was like $15 for however many weeks. So it wound up being really economical. I'm like, yeah, you go. For $15, get out.
Well, and that brings up another thing. My 86-year-old aunt, she lost her husband 25 years ago, never remarried. She's really big into her church and does all that. But she has this group of ladies that do line dancing twice a week. And then she goes to her, she's like, I'm going to the old lady workout at the Senior Citizen Club. And she's like, Wendy, I don't have to sit in a chair. She's like, we get everyone ready. She's like, there's a lot of old people there, which cracks me up because, again, she's 86 and she's probably in better health than I am. And so it's one of those things where it's interesting because, this lady's been by herself for a really long time, but she is the most upbeat and social person. But what gets her going is she knows she has these exercise classes with her friends and her community. And it's great because they help each other and cook for each other and go out to lunch together. And it was one of those things where we were really worried about her in the beginning, but she's did exactly what you said. She joined different parts of her community and parks. And now she's line dancing at 86.
There you go. Let's do the boot and scoot and boogie.
Hey, whatever works for you, right?
And that's an easy. So, like I said, if you're checking your mail, don't like, oh, what's this? I'm not going to do that and throw it away. Look through it. Just kind of see what's out there, see what's available. Because I actually looked at it, and there's beach volleyball, and it wasn't even at the beach. It's just, well, I guess I should say it's sand volleyball. But like I said, then there was volleyball. There was a basketball league that you could join. I mean, a lot of the teams come in preset. Knitting, and not exactly exercise, but it's social, just to give you an example. So there are different, yeah,
that's how I joined my tennis team. I joined a tennis team in my community because I didn't really know my neighbors. And I love to play tennis. It was something that I was super passionate about, but I hadn't played since I was right out of high school. And so I wasn't that great, but we started a tennis league. I mean, they had some that are higher levels, but a beginner league, and there was room for it within, because you can only have so many teams. And it's great. I now play tennis with ladies that I did not know before. I knew one person who was my neighbor, and we got together and said, let's start this and see who's interested. We had 27 people from the start. We put it on our Facebook page in our neighborhood and said, hey, we're going to start this. If you've never played, that's fine. We're going to have a coach. We're going to have people take lessons. And we've been together now for 5 years. It's great. We're moving up together. We're doing great. And it's something that I didn't think I was going to do. But the number one reason was because I did not know my neighbors. I did not know people in my neighborhood. And it's been really positive for me. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's why I look at it.
All this time you talking about tennis, I never knew that's how it got started. I thought it was just you got recruited and, hey, you look like you can play tennis. Why don't you come on in?
Yeah.
I thought that's what it was.
We started it and said, let's do it. And so now I'm still captaining a team in my spare time, but it's fun.
Yeah. Okay. So on that vein, we're talking about looking up through local programming, but you can even start closer than that. If you have friends, if you have family, even, or even coworkers, like what you did, Wendy, is you and your neighbor, and then you started that great thing that you have going on with your tennis group. But you can even start with your family. You can start, just whoever you have within arm's reach, and maybe you can get something started yourself from a standpoint of let's go for a hike, let's go for a walk, let's go to the beach, let's go to the pool, let's do something outside together. So you found yours through tennis, but even something that's even more tangible or that you can take action on today is go through, I'm gonna say Rolodex, but you go through your contact.
People don't even know what a Rolodex anymore.
Yeah, so Rolodex for all of you. Yeah, it's a little spinny wheel that you'd have business cards in, and you just, but you just go through your phone. What? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Now you just scan it out.
Do they do that? Yeah, sorry. I need to get, it's 2024. I gotta get back into it. But just go through your contact list. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah, go through your contact list and see who you know, see who you can trust, who's gonna say, yeah, let's do this, and do something. Easy as that.
Easy as that.
Easy.
You don't have to be alone. Help me help you.
You don't have to be alone is the biggest part of this episode, Wendy. So when we talk about strength in numbers, overcoming loneliness through exercise, this is how it happens. This is how it works. You do have to take some action, but just understand that by taking this action, you can offset a lot of the detrimental effects of being lonely. And you can have all the friends you want. And if you can associate through exercise and anything movement based, explore that, take an action, take a step, find what's comfortable for you, and take that next step. And I think if our listeners, if you or somebody that you know can stand some opportunity to be amongst other people and break isolation as well as loneliness, then hopefully you pulled something from this episode. Indeed. So Wendy, thanks for your insight. I appreciate the stories, by the way. That's great. I mean, all this time I never knew about your tennis history.
There you go.
There we go. So for all of you that have listened to us here on Random Fit, thank you for your time and attention when it comes to listening to this episode on strength in numbers. So if you liked what you heard today, let us know what you want to hear about us talk about in the future by commenting, reaching out. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll do what we can to get that as a topic for a future episode. So like, follow, subscribe, download, share, give us a 5 out of 5. If you can rate us, we'd appreciate that. But until next time, everybody, take care and be well.